Thank you very much. Thank you, dear friends, colleagues from Turkey, from the UK. There's quite a long list of people that I have to thank today and give greetings to. Fellow trustees, esteemed panelists, representatives from the Council and the Ministry of Education, fantastic, amazing pupils from Tarabya British Schools, and of course, Mr. Mehmet, the facilitator and creator of today's event. And I'm very pleased. It's been a very strange 2 years, as everybody knows, and it's really great that we are able to gather today in this place, such a historic site, historic building. So, I am a trustee of Tarabya British School. I'm also the chairman of English UK and work with a lot of UK government initiatives in the UK. So if you'll bear with me for a few minutes, I'll take you on a journey that starts in the UK. It comes to Turkey, and then at the end, we will go global with the plans that we'll be announcing. So my role in the UK with English UK, which is the national association for all of the British Council accredited language centres and teacher training centres, around 500 or so members in the UK, which makes it the world's largest language teaching association. We work very closely with international education initiatives in the UK. And 3 years ago, the UK government produced our international education strategy, which spoke about the target of international students we wanted to bring in to the UK. The target was 600,000 annual international students by 2030. So we had a good decade to achieve that target. Well, maybe the target was incorrect, but it was actually achieved last year already, 3 years into the strategy and 8 years ahead of time. So currently there are over 600,000 international students coming into the UK on an annual basis. 450,000 of those are non-EU and 150,000 of them are from the EU. So the UK government had a choice. They had to think, what are we going to do now? We've got 8 years to get to the end of this strategy deadline. Should we increase the target, or should we just for a few years sustain this target and give the international students the best possible experience and journey? So for the time being, the decision is to sustain this 600,000 students that are coming in to the UK every year through initiatives in the UK. And you know that UK universities, they've been welcoming international students for many, many years. And at the moment, there is a focus on a different kind of internationalization of education. We call it transnational education, which really is just a UK qualification being delivered overseas. So now in the UK, we have this internationalization at home, which is the accepting of international students, and we also have the internationalization overseas. And they run in parallel with each other. So there are a lot of UK universities at the moment looking at overseas initiatives, not only to look at ways of increasing the number of quality international students coming to the UK, but actually delivery of these programs overseas in different countries. So, starting in the UK, I've been involved with international education for a long time, almost 30 years, and my journey with the wider Horizon Group, which includes Tarabya British Schools, started in the late 1990s when I first came across quite a young Mr. Mehmet Gültekin at a university that I was working at in London. And the reason why he was there was to seek out high-quality institutions for his students in Istanbul and other regions of Turkey. So this is well over 20 years ago. There's a very humble statistic on the website that says over 10,000 students have been sent abroad during this period. Actually, it's much higher than that. So it really is a very humble statistic. It's between 20 and 30,000 students that have been sent to the UK and other countries from this school, from the secondary campus, and from the wider group with some counselling and study abroad initiatives. Language schools, summer schools, high school and exchange programs, undergraduate, postgraduate, doctoral programs, from England to China, over 50 countries, thousands of overseas partners. So it's an incredible achievement, really, for one which they should all be commended, everyone involved in these initiatives over the last now 25 years. And this is very important for the UK in particular. Actually, it's indispensable that key partners should be supported. And TBS and the wider group innovating in the education sector with the work that they have achieved and continue to this day to innovate. We saw an amazing video of TBS and all the different initiatives that it's been involved in over the last few years, and we saw the royal visit here at this school to open this wonderful building. And to this day, the connections with the UK, the high-level connections, continue. And there are several students, I think some of them are in this room today, that have been invited to the House of Lords in just a couple of weeks to present to the House of Lords the work that TBS is doing in Istanbul. It's a great thing, really, and the vision, which is to raise globally minded individuals, in some ways you could say it starts today even more than it ever has done before, with a very forward-thinking and innovative collaboration with NCUK. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the University Consortium because we have Adam from NCUK coming up after me to explain a bit more in detail about what they do. But we know that in the last couple of years, and the panel will be discussing some of these thoughts today, that everything has changed. The pandemic has changed a lot of things, and international student mobility is one of those things that has changed perhaps more than anything else. So as I said, the internationalization at home in the UK and other countries, and now we have this internationalization overseas, which for many in the sector call transnational education, which again is the UK qualification being delivered overseas. So it's very exciting for me personally, and I know for our university partners that are here today as well, that it's Turkey where this is happening today, where this partnership and this collaboration is being announced. Arguably the youngest country in Europe, with great internationalization plans for the future, and having it here as a hub of global education for other international students to come and receive and be delivered to their UK qualifications. And we're not only talking about the International Foundation Year, which is delivered towards the end of high school, but also International Year 1, leading on to International Year 2. So this collaboration and this partnership is really the first steps, the foundation of a Turkish-British university in Turkey, where qualifications will be delivered with UK partners as the awarding bodies. Internationalization at home, internationalization overseas, running in parallel, a great prospect and a very exciting opportunity for Turkish students and for other international students also. So please join me in the celebration of this event today, this partnership, this collaboration, also this symposium, hopefully that you will find interesting. Thank you very much.
Hi everybody. The video covered a lot of the material, and I'm really here to give an introduction, and I hope many of the students who listen now will come up to me later and ask questions, because that's really the key. The takeaway from what we do today is that the students feel confident that they can approach NCUK, our student support team, they can approach our university partners who've joined today, and really they have the confidence in knowing that they're guaranteed access into university when they finish the program. NCUK may be new to many of the people here today, but we've been running since 1987. We have many years of experience running qualifications, and as the video explained, they're entirely for international students. So although we might be new to Turkey, we've been running in many countries for many years. We now operate in around 30 countries, 100 study center partners. So the qualifications that we produce are the same in every area. If a student decides to study the program here in Turkey, their access to university, the quality of the foundation product itself is exactly the same. The opportunities afforded will be the same as a student who chose to study in the UK. So it's a fantastic opportunity, and we're very, very excited. We've long wanted to work with a partner in Turkey, and the pandemic, of course, presented enormous challenges to everybody, and so I'm enormously grateful that we've managed to work together over the last 6-9 months to really put this together, and we're incredibly enthusiastic, excited and optimistic about the future partnership that we will enjoy. The qualifications themselves, we have the International Foundation Year, which is the same level, same standard as an A level, but it's a 1-year qualification rather than 2. So the students will study only 1 year, same academic year as they would do with A level, but it's a very concentrated study. So whereas A level is designed primarily for British students, and it's very broad in what they'll study, with the foundation, it's focused on what they need to be able to succeed at university in the degree of their choice. So their access to university, you'll see when this later comes up, you'll see all of the universities in the network. There's more than 50 universities now. The UK is where we've worked for many, many years, and we have most of our universities, but universities Australia, New Zealand, Canada, US, and we have some in other locations as well. By doing the foundation, those universities are all accessible. We're also going to be running the International Year 1 here. The International Year 1 is the first year of the university degree. That's what Mr. Steve Phillips was talking about with the transnational education. That's what we'll be able to offer students here. With that qualification, students will study business-related or engineering-related foundation, and then they will progress to universities in the UK, Australia, or New Zealand. Again, the students don't have to specify which university they wish to go into. They'll be able to do the International Year 1, and then with our student support team, they'll understand what's available globally, and they'll eventually choose which university to progress into. So that's the qualifications. For me personally, this is my first time in Turkey, which shocked many of our guests today, and I'm ashamed it's taken me so long to visit, but I've been delighted to be here so far. I've had a wonderful time. You don't need to apologize for the weather. I'm from Manchester in England, and we have worse weather, if you can believe it. We absolutely do have worse weather. So the number of times I've already been offered an umbrella and I don't need it, so it's fine. That's fine. So I hope I can visit again very soon. I absolutely will be visiting again very soon, and I really want to learn more about Turkey and everything that's available here at TBS. So finally, really from me, it's to thank everybody I've met today, Mehmet especially for the introductions. It's been wonderful. But really the students I want to thank for attending as well, and I really want to encourage you to speak to everybody at NCUK to find out what's available to you. And we'll really look forward to the year ahead and the many years beyond. So thank you very much. Thank you.
So, dear friends and colleagues, this is the symposium part of the discussion today. As you can see from the title of this discussion, of this panel, the internationalization of education in turbulent times, opportunities and challenges. So, I mentioned briefly that it's been a very strange couple of years that we've all lived through. No one expected the last couple of years. No one could have predicted what we have been through. not only as educators, but also the whole world, actually, in whatever walk of life that you find yourself in. And we will discuss a little bit today from the education perspective, the opportunities and challenges. I'm generally a very positive person, so I might focus more on the opportunities than the challenges, so you might need to reel me in at some point and say something negative, just to make sure that we are aware of what has happened over the last couple of years. But I'll start with a quote, actually, from the World Bank, and they famously said, right in the middle of the pandemic, "We are living amidst what is potentially one of the greatest threats in our lifetime to global education, a gigantic educational crisis." So education is one of the major areas that has been disrupted by the pandemic. But despite everything, there have been some innovations, some things that have moved forward, some things that perhaps we might not have done otherwise, that we have been forced to do or we have embraced in some ways. And I would like to bring in one or two of our panelists now to look at some of these opportunities that have come about from an education perspective. So, Dr. Soner, if I can come to you first.
Me?
Yes.
I am the lucky one.
What has happened? What have you seen? Innovation? What has been presented to you and your students, perhaps over the last couple of years, or more recently?
Okay, that's a tough question. In one aspect, everybody looks so British except for me. You look at the stage. Guys, lots of things has happened. I mean, that's the bottom line. And from my perspective, all educational systems on the world has collapsed. But we don't know what's coming in place of the system. Oh, that's cute. Isn't that? But I'm going to present my opinions within the frame of the learning perspective, because my major is instructional technology. And now I want to look at how people start learning in a different way versus if it's going to be any different than how they are doing now. Because of the pandemics, everybody got so used to learning online, right? Most of the students, for example, they were online for a year and a half. Then all of a sudden, we switched to face-to-face education again. And some of the students said that, oh, I was quite comfortable at home. Why did you bug me? Other students said, I got so stuck at home. I want to go back to campus. And the main point is that now, probably we are going to keep online learning in the future as well, but it's not because of the pandemics, but because of the internet. The educational systems were switching from face-to-face to online learning. That's for sure. But the point is that there are some challenges in online learning, just as it's the case in the face-to-face learning. One of the issues, just ask to yourself, one of the issues was to motivate yourself, right? Towards the course, towards the content. I mean, I'm talking more about the self-regulation skills of students. And another issue that probably all higher education institutions should start thinking about, how are we going to deal with the dropout rates on online learning? Because it's a challenge, one of the challenges. Another challenge is about how are you going to, as universities, how are we going to able to attract students towards universities? Because now there is a big discussion between certificates versus diploma. Which one is more needed? If you are talking about diploma, it refers to institutions like higher education institutions. If you talk about certificates, it's more about companies, IT companies. Now, what are those new generations after for, honestly? After skills or after learning experience? Because diploma is more about learning experience. And another challenge that I think we should start thinking about is, what are we going to do with the existing faculty members, because they are so used to teaching in the old way?
Yes.
how are they going to transfer their skills to the new way? It's going to take some time. And we have to be patient about that. But that's the case for the families as well. What about the repetition of the online degrees that universities are offering for the next generation? Because some families are still quite conservative on the old style education and the diploma that they had in the past. And probably they would like their kids to have the same diploma and have the same experience at the higher education. But the bottom line is that I think that's the biggest opportunity of the new era. Now everybody has an access to high quality content, learning content. And I admire that. Why is that? Because now I am not limited to a professor at the university. I am not limited to one of the textbooks that provided by one of those big publishing companies, but I can learn any content from anybody on the earth. I guess that's gonna be a big opportunity for all those new generation guys. But the bottom line is that who is gonna motivate me to go outside and search for this content and to learn by myself? And that's gonna be the biggest task of the universities. How are you gonna motivate kids to learn? Rather than having kids meet with the content, because content is already available, and probably the much better quality is available outside of the university. But the point is that how are you going to have your kids to be motivated towards this content? So let me stop here for an introduction. It's more than an introduction. So you have the stage now.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think we're seeing more independent learners is something which is definitely from the UK side. We're seeing that within our institutions as well. And with the independence, I think with us as educators, and I'm going to come to Professor Mehmet Akif with this one, are we more confident now, do you think? Like, is there a resilience in our education system which enables us to deal better with emergencies of this kind? And perhaps, I mean, your background is very interesting. Perhaps just explain briefly how you've come to be able to answer such a question.
Okay, toughest question. Well, challenges first, because you told that you are not going to highlight. We are going through a very turbulent times indeed, not only because of COVID, but because the world is changing faster than ever. And it's a big thing. After the collapse of the Soviets, the world is not sort of restructured again. At least there's not a written agreement about how big powers should operate. It's posing a lot of challenges to stability of nation states, stability of societies. The very structure of societies are being affected by these developments and uncertainties. This brings a huge amount of uncertainty to people's lives and therefore to education. But during the lockdowns, in the COVID era, we had two major challenges. One is a disconnect from the real life. That's what we all faced. And also our students, especially those who started early. Yes. They didn't have enough, they didn't have real experience with the school, with people, with experience, with personal relations. Kids didn't want to go even out to the garden. They are so afraid. So the psychological impact we usually disregard. But it is there, and it is going to stay there for a foreseeable future, for this generation. There's a disconnection. It's a big problem. It needs to be filled up when they come back to school and in social life. Another one is that we indeed deeply realize that how inequal people are, because when we are locked down, we witnessed that a lot of students didn't have access to computers, to internet. And even if they did, it's not stable, it's not strong enough, right. And so on and so forth. And because of my academic position, I came across several occasions that students didn't even want to bring this up with the administration of the university, so he didn't want their economic situation not known. So it was so difficult for university administrators to follow up, to simply track what's going on with regard to every single student. And then international students, we had a lot of them, and they had a little bit of narrower community compared to their Turkish compatriots. So it was difficult to reach out to them, but so economic inequality, this disparity is a big challenge in front of education. But at the same time, this lockdown brought us, presented with us two major opportunities, one of which is speed. We are living in a very speedy time, as if the world is, running around speedier than it used to, and in fact it is. I remember when the first computer was invented in my university, University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. It was a huge computer, as big as this room perhaps. And then there are thousands of glitches, switches, whatever. It took 2 school buses inside, and the speed of which was 0.0001. 1946 or 47. So these, cell phones, smartphones, whatever, we do a lot of things with them, and their speed is thousands times faster than the first ENIAC computer. So people adapted to this technology very fast, well, at least certain proportion of the society, and they embraced this technology. We had technologies like Zoom, Meet, they became part of our daily lives. So I think that's a good opportunity that we sort of experienced. And then another thing is that accessibility. I think these new technologies provided with us a huge level of accessibility to, like my colleague said, to the information, to different corners of the world, to different centers of knowledge production, and then everything suddenly became visible. Good things, bad things, horrible things, whatever is happening around in a small corner of the world can easily be shared with millions, if not billions, instantaneously. So these are the challenges and opportunities that we came across, and I think we learn from these challenges and difficulties, and we adapt. So as long as we care for those who are lagging behind to catch up with us, to catch up with this new technology, to catch up with this new production of information, I think we are on the good side, on the better side.
Good.
Is that enough?
Yes,
of
thank
an
you.
introduction?
Yeah, thank you so much. So let's come across to Adam now and his experience with some of his university partners. We're talking about some of the technology-assisted learning, the blended learning, but your partners, they like the traditional approach, right? The face-to-face approach. Some of them have embraced technology, but are you hearing that they're wanting to bring everyone back to the campus straight away, or is it more sort of blended is the future, let's go?
I think that the universities want people to return to the campus. Just before I go into the universities, really, I think I could give statistics, we can give numbers to demonstrate that, but I think in the most anecdotal sense, I think we got that today through visiting here. It's the first time I've had the opportunity to visit both TBS locations, to walk around, to visit the students of all ages, and it's exciting. It's thoroughly enjoyable. It's what we all want to see. And why is that? I'm not visiting the classrooms to look at each textbook and see just the content of the study, which is what online is offering. It's the content, it's the qualification at the end of it, but that's really the start and the end of the experience. And so in every classroom I visit from every age group, we're enjoying that human contact that comes with it. everything that goes around the qualification, the study itself, whether it's a cheeky, naughty child in some of the younger classes that we saw a little hint of in the best way possible, to the older students who are focused on their universities and are discussing together where to go, investigating their options, really planning their careers ahead. All of that really needs to be in a physical location, and I saw that today. So going back to the universities, higher age group, but I think the same thing applies with those. I think for the universities, the facilities, everything they like to show, demonstrate their investment, what they can offer students around the study requires being in the location. And if you ask students why they're coming to study in the UK, there's a multitude of reasons. One of them will be the quality of the education, and it should be that. It should be that maybe most important in every case. But they're also looking at the experience of living in a different country. They're looking at growing as people. It's one of the most common things that students will speak about when they've finished, about how they've grown as a person. They've changed from what they were at the beginning of a degree 3 years earlier. Well, would that growth be possible purely studying online? I don't think it would. I think the students would feel that they've been left behind in many ways. I think that the cultural aspects, the social skills, everything you get, the challenges that you face, the challenges that you have to overcome. It's not plain sailing. It's not easy to study at university for a few years. It's not easy to get a top degree. But those challenges are what make the person the adult they become. And purely learning online from behind a screen doesn't offer that in any aspects whatsoever. Drilling a bit deeper with the universities, I think they'll always face a challenge of justifying. You mentioned it a little, alluded to it, about the universities. Well, how can they justify their fees? How can they justify being more expensive than a different university? They can justify that because of the quality of the facilities, because of the expertise that's there on campus. Even with the best teachers in the world, can they impart that expertise from a computer screen? I believe it's limited in its scope. But I don't believe there's no place for online. I'm a firm believer that the pandemic only accelerated what was already in motion. And that's not only for education. I think it applies to so many things in society. And so you can't put the genie back in the bottle. It's done, it's out. And I believe that online will play a part. And I'd be very surprised if universities were not building what they did around some form of online provision. But I believe it will only be an extra element to what's still the traditional learning experience.
Good, yes, thank you. And Chris, coming to you, so your world is slightly different. I mean, you move in the world of education, but also commercial as well. So some of your partners will blended. Do you think it will become the best of all worlds? Are you seeing more training delivered online, meetings online, or is there this urge to get back to face-to-face meetings?
Well, I mean, it's a massive subject. I'm not sure we're going to come up with all the answers today, but I mean, looking at it from a business perspective, and I mean, we're absolutely right in witnessing a massive change globally, and it affects everybody. You know, it's not something that just affects one part of society or country. It affects everybody globally. I was on a meeting, a panel only last week here in Istanbul, where we were discussing the effects on trade and business because of the recent tragedy of Ukraine and Russia, and what that will mean to global trade and supply chains, and more specifically how it affects this particular region. So everybody's looking at different scenarios in terms of what's going to happen as we all go forward. And key to that for me is education. Because the next generation is going to have to deal with all this change. So education has to provide them with the right type of education and the tools to deal with it. So it's not just a question of traditional education. I think traditional education is going to get left behind. You know, people sitting I disagree to some extent. I think this blended model is going to be part of it. And I also sit on the board in UK on a college, and they have a strong distance learning platform. And there is a clear distinction between online and distance learning. They're not the same. And as we move forward, I think distance learning, to give students the flexibility of not actually being on campus in a particular country, to actually do a degree in their own country with the support of the university, providing all the information that they need, and the tutors actually giving them the support that they need. There will be a mix of on campus and in class, but a lot of it will be on distance learning. So these are all going to be changes, and you've also got, I mean, you can't separate really, the need for education in isolation of how that's going to work. It's got to be related to business, because everybody who comes out of education is going to be looking for a job. They're going to be in business. So the traditional professions that during my time, and I'm sure there still are people out there, who were looking for students or their children to go into professions, accountancy, doctors, lawyers, whatever, I think that will decrease. I don't think the young students will actually be looking to go into these professions. Some will, obviously, because we still need them. But we look at tech and the growth of tech, and we look at what students will want to get involved in tech and how fast that's changing. So the mix of degrees is going to change. I don't think it's all going to move towards the professions. I think it's going to move the other way. Because business will be looking for people who've got the skills to move their business forward. And because they're all deeply embedded in tech, they'll be looking for people who've got that tech capability. They'll be looking at people who've got language capability. They'll be looking for people who've got good interpersonal skills, who've got global inclusivity. All these things will be coming into play. So it's going to be a major shift. And it has to be inclusive. And inclusivity is a problem at this particular moment in time, because we have governments around the world who are protectionist, who are nationalist. That's not the way forward. We have to have inclusivity. And if we want a global education system that's providing students who've got this global perspective, that's how we will have a future. We've also got extra dynamics coming into play. Global sustainability, the environment, ESG. I mean, it's a surprise to me, because I sit on a board in UK on a college, that in terms of degrees in global sustainability and ESG, there are only 3 universities in UK who do a degree in that subject. And we've got an environmental timetable that within the next, what should we say, 25 years, we're all going into green technology, green finance, we've got renewables, all that's going to come into play. So we've got to have an education system that's providing students with this know-how and understanding of what global sustainability is all about and what ESG is all about. And currently, we're a long way behind. And if we don't educate this generation to actually deal with these issues, then, I'm sorry, but I think we're going to be in a bad place. We're not going to move forward. But I have every confidence that our education systems will adapt to all these new challenges, and that the students coming out of universities and further education will actually have the skills, the knowledge, in actually to make this transition, so that we do have a world that we can live in for generations to come.
Good, thank you so much. Yeah, I really like what you were saying about there's been a major shift, and I think there has, and we have changed throughout this period. And I would like to move just slightly away from education, if I may, but we'll bring it back, don't worry, and talk about a major shift with us as people, actually. And you can do it within the education industry and moving more towards a soft skill area. So I'm a people person, and I always like to think that we can change throughout anything that happens to us, actually. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't take away through what we've been going through a greater sense of empathy for each other, even within global sharing. So what are we able to do now that we couldn't do before? Is it an opportunity for us to unite, forge different kinds of relationships, and share more about what we are doing in a global way? Surely that is an opportunity.
I'll pass the word to Mehmet Hoca.
One thing I can't do that I could do before is fit into most of my suits. From working from home for 2 years, that's one thing I've definitely struggled.
You better start exercise.
Yeah, to be flippant, but it's definitely a shock for me. I need to get that. But what do you think about the opportunities that we get?
Well, it's a different life if there's a big shift. If that thing is an opportunity and a threat at the same time. Are we ready for this big shift is the biggest question. Like is indicated, certain segments of society in our country and certain countries are not ready for this shift, that's obvious. I also, I have another role at UNESCO National Commission. I chair a committee on management of social transformation, which is called MOST, which I served in the headquarters for about 2 years as vice president of the Group 1 for Western Europe and North America. I introduced a topic to UNESCO that these new technologies, social media, whatever we name it, we are living with them right now, that they didn't exist 10 years ago. Their influence on our society. This is a new thing. If there's a big shift, yes, society is changing and changing fast. People are meeting in social media. People are watching each other in social media, whether real or not, to a certain degree. The speed of this new lifestyle prevents us, that's number one problem for me personally, to understand each other better, to see each other as human beings, to share things with each other, to bear each other, to carry on, to give a shoulder, to simply support each other. These things are eroding as we are more involved with these technologies. Name 10 social media technologies. They didn't exist 10 years ago. So this is a big challenge, big challenge, big problem. And therefore, we need a new law for these new things, new lifestyles, which does not exist yet. There's not an international internet law, for instance. Good things are spread so fast, and bad things are spread so fast. So people take a model from each other's behaviors. How can you prevent this? How much freedom you are going to give to people, whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. So yes, we are for freedom, we are for liberal free float of ideas, but other countries are not like that. So how can you sort of establish the equilibrium between the two or several different societies, and thus internationalization of education? So in fact, my personal fear is that we are progressing so fast, so there might be no common agreed upon principles with regard to what do we value the most in our lives as human beings. So I think challenges and opportunities are intertwined, So the biggest challenge for this generation and for us also is to distinguish what is human, what's not human. Yes, at the end of the day, you have to have a good education, a good society, so that you are employed.
Well, it has to be relevant.
Yeah,
it has to be relevant.
You are irrelevant
to the new global environment. Now, yeah, I'm not saying that we should do away with social interaction. Absolutely, we have to have that. So, I mean, and I don't think technology is actually going to totally replace that. But, I mean, we talk about lifestyle, and COVID's had a big impression on the way people want to live their lives and their work-life balance. Because we've seen it that people do not want to live in high-rise flats during COVID because they get depressed, they've nowhere to go, they don't have any social interaction. So people are now moving out of cities, they're moving out of apartments, they want a house with a garden. So that they want to go out into the garden, they're working from home. Now, I think that is a change that will actually bring new communities in other areas of the country that will actually create more social interaction, because those communities will start to be inclusive and support themselves within those communities. Now, okay, maybe I'm looking for a perfect world, but at the end of the day, that is what's happening. And you look at the big organizations today, like let's say the professional services companies here in Istanbul, Deloitte, PwC, KPMG, Ernst & Young. They've all downsized their offices during COVID.
Yeah.
Deloitte had 4 floors in Maslak. They only now have 2 because they've got more people working from home. Civil servants in UK, although the government doesn't want them to do this, but that's what's happening. They can't change it. Civil servants in UK are only spending 2 days a week in their offices. So that's going to be a major change in the way that people have their life-work balance. And this will create, as we all know, opportunities. But it'll also create more interpersonal skill and more social impact as well. So I don't think that technology is actually going to destroy that. But it will be a different way.
Which brings us to the question, are we ready for it? So obviously there will be some gaps in social norms, so we need to fill it in. Just remind me, year 2003, some decades ago, there was a meeting in Istanbul. Minister of National Education invited me. I was a visiting scholar then in Turkey. So I looked back at my notes. I proposed the idea that a few decades from now, or maybe within a decade, there will be an education without classrooms. I found that in my notes. So here we are, no classrooms, Zoom education and so on. So a few years ago, one report came out in the United States, which is about a very threatening issue that we have, how ready we have to be. 45% of currently enrolled students to grade A, first year in school, will not be working in jobs that exist today. Which means half of the first and second or third graders today are going to be working in jobs that do not exist yet. That's the speed I'm talking about. We have to get ready for this much change. Yes, that's a big leap forward.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's a very important thing that we should remember. This, when pupils come to school, the social relationships, the peer-to-peer, the interaction. You mentioned the creating, citizens, if you like. And Dr. Soner, we were speaking about that this morning, weren't we, with the students at your university, and how they wanted to come back, but some of the more academic and some of the professors were.
Yep. Maybe I need to talk about this survey conducted at our university, because after having this experience of like 1.5 years of online learning, then we asked students and faculty members to which extent they were satisfied with online experience. And half of the students who participated in the survey, they said they preferred face-to-face education. But almost like 75% of faculty members, they stated they were happy with the online education. So it says something. Now, we switched to face-to-face education again in September. This is my personal experience and observation. Yes, students, they want to be on campus, but they don't want to be in the class. That's about it. Yes, they want to come to Metro campus.
But not for education.
Not for education, exactly.
For social
Why?
interaction.
Now we have to go back to the definitions of human beings. One of the definitions is that it's a social animal, isn't that? It's a smart animal. It's an emotional animal. Now, nothing has changed in the definitions, but the conditions are now different. Now, how are we gonna bridge the discrepancy between the definitions and the conditions? Maybe that's the challenge in front of us. Why? As Hocam said, I mean, the human being is not changing that fast. Even the technology is changing too fast. The problem is the discrepancy between the speed of those two, because we are not machines, that's the difference. But we started treating people as if they are machines, but they are not. They are humans. It's that simple. We do not go to campuses or higher education institutions only to get a degree, guys. Even that's the place at which we found our partners, our wives, our husbands. That's the reason we go to the campus. And that's the reason we are searching for such environments, because that's the only way that we can express our feelings or our existence or justify our existence. Now the problem is that now the IT sector is the leading one on the earth. That's the bottom line. It's not the case like it was the case 100 years ago. And now it's pushing too hard on people saying that, hey, you have to adopt those technologies, you have to use those. Even though if I get an Apple, like iPhone, if I buy an iPhone, let's say I don't want to change or renew my iPhone, but after a certain time, I cannot upgrade my phone. Why? Because the company requires you have to get a new one. So the point is that how are we gonna bridge the discrepancy between the nature of a human being and the speed of technology? That's a challenge. From the learning perspective, I call those three variables as the pillars of learning: motivation, commitment, cognitive commitment and emotional commitment, and feedback. Whatever institution can provide those at high quality, they are the ones who are going to exist in the future. But others are going to disappear. They vanished. Motivation, commitment, and feedback, because people learn on those pillars. Those are the conditions for learning. Under any conditions, guys, even on online, even in face-to-face, but on online now we need those much more than we used to need in the face-to-face environments. Maybe that's going to be the perspective for higher education institutions, to provide such pillars to students in high quality. And as the last word, assessment is going to be a big challenge for universities, because GPAs are not making any sense anymore. Now, we cannot judge or evaluate anybody based on the GPA, because we don't care how much he or she can recall, but how much he can or she can produce is the bottom line. So we are talking about the digital portfolios now. So what are those higher education institutions that are going to be able to have students have those electronic digital portfolios? So we are after those. Why? All companies are going to hire people based on the products, not the GPAs. GPA is dead. Am I too pessimistic?
No, that's okay. I needed some negative in there because I always look at the opportunities. So that's great.
Until you get accepted to a university.
That's the bottom line, especially in Turkey.
Yeah, the students didn't cheer when you said GPA is dead.
Be careful.
Because we want to see whether we are able to do it or not.
Yeah.
That's because now everybody wants to see a product. We are not after how much you recall. I mean, honestly, that's the last century.
So the online, yep, it's changing. It's definitely provided us with an opportunity. Also, you know, with international travel. So I've been traveling internationally. You know, I'm sure we all have for a number of years. And I remember before the pandemic, which seems like such a long time ago now. I used to go for day meetings or individual meetings or lunch with officials in different countries. Hanoi and Bangkok were two places I had to go to just for a 2-hour meeting flying from London. Now that seems ridiculous that I would go all the way over there for a 2-hour meeting, have lunch with someone, and then come back. And I meet with these people now on a much more regular basis online. Some of them, you know, are, I don't want to say elderly because that might be too disrespectful, but they're really embracing.
Senior.
Senior, yes, thank you.
Seniors.
Mature people.
Embracing technology just in an amazing way, and you know, these business relationships have gone to a different level actually, because we can now meet on a more regular basis. So is this the same within institutions, that students are now, they have exposure and access to people, industry experts that perhaps they never had before, through online technology? And Adam, you were an international traveller. You are an international traveller. You had a bit of a break for 2 years from the travelling, but you're back now. How are you seeing that? Are you, during the pandemic, were you connecting with your partners overseas in a more fruitful way, or for you is it, do you have to get back out there and see them in person?
I think it's a mix of both, and that's probably the answer you expected.
Intertwined.
And that's what people say.
Yes.
But I think for some of the aspects that people, when they say they want to return to them, I think it's tough. It's gone. You won't return to those visits to Hanoi for a 2-hour meeting, and I don't think there's any way you could justify that would be necessary. But I think that we, like me being here now today, everybody being in this room today, demonstrates that there's still the need for interaction, physical visits, and I hope those continue with the universities over the last 2 years. There's been a noticeable progression from the start of the pandemic to where we are now, where in the first year the universities were always very keen for webinars, engagement with students, guest lectures, and we would do them on a daily basis with our partner universities. But the enthusiasm for those has abated by the universities themselves, students. The level of interaction that we got at the start has drifted away a little bit. But they'll still continue because they're great. What you're saying is an opportunity. Yeah, it's fantastic that we can arrange it virtually with a drop of a hat for a professor to give a guest lecture and speak to students on the other side of the planet. Who would say that's a negative thing? How could that possibly be to anybody's detriment? And similarly, students, if they want to go the opposite way, reach out to universities, ask questions of the universities, find out what's on offer. Why would that be in any way a bad thing for universities to be able to have sessions where students can engage with them online, and we do them constantly, and I don't see any reason that would change. But I just attended an education fair over the weekend where it was attended by representatives. A few are joining us today who'll have the opportunity to meet later, and they've all chosen to visit because that interaction is necessary, the human interaction, which we've mentioned a few times already. So the universities from UK, but globally, universities which wouldn't have been able to attend previously, which didn't have the presence, European universities on a global platform, which online doesn't really offer. I did another anecdotal example. I did an online fair where we attended as NCUK, and the online fair was in alphabetical order. You could click left or you could click right to visit each booth. Whether you chose to click left or click right, I was at the very end. It was incredibly frustrating. And so the technology is not fully there really to be able to offer that, where really someone's expertise, someone's level, someone's ability level rises to the top, where if I'm at that fair and I can see the kind of engagement that students are getting, I can see the booths where the universities have excellent staff, they're really promoting what's on offer. The parents especially are really learning a lot from that, taking a lot of information away, the notes that are coming down from it. I can really see that, and I think that's a fantastic representative of the university there. And I'll see another university where someone's just playing on their phone, or just on their iPad, not engaging fully, and I think the students are not going to be interested in that. And that's one person's impression. That one person at that event has changed potentially the student's direction for their life. And I just don't really think that that can ever be really replicated online. But I don't think it's a case of online being a bad thing, and there's many magnificent aspects of it. Other fields, other areas, I think you can see how it just settles. I was in publishing previously, and only maybe 6-7 years ago, everyone said that physical books were dead. Everything was going to be e-books. It was all going to be delivered in that manner. People really believed that. I would attend conferences where it was all about the digital technology, this is it now. And yeah, there's a hybrid element of that, and they're used. But is it better to have the online platform, or is it better to have the physical book and be writing notes? I think as things have settled in the last 3, 4, 5 years, that's really shown that the physical book is what people want, and that's what we'll continue to do with online elements. And I think that settling process is what we'll find with university engagement, online delivery, distance learning. And I was interested when you said
I think we need to clarify the difference between online and distance learning.
That was interesting. Yep.
Distance learning is a blended platform. So you spend time on campus,
Right.
and you spend time learning from wherever you are in the country. And I think that's the model, that's the platform that we'll see more of. And it also brings in this other aspect of diversity, where particularly in emerging markets, there are more women who want to get involved in education. And we run a degree to encourage more women into marine engineering, because there are not enough women in marine engineering around the world. And we're going to see a lot more of that as equality becomes a really strong platform that people have to engage with. And I think distance learning will also help that in allowing more gender equality across the globe, and particularly in emerging markets where women want to get into education.
And I think that's great. That's a really good example of the things that we are learning to do better, if you like. So build back better. We're coming out of the pandemic. What are some of the things that going forward we should look at as a different approach, a new approach? Not necessarily that we've learnt to do something differently, but just maybe we've always wanted to do it, and now we're looking at things in a different way. So I think, Chris, you're staying with you just for a moment on this, almost calling it a post-COVID recovery, if you like, the collaboration between businesses, employers, and universities. You said before that throughout all your commercial experience, education is still key. So should we be doing more between the two industries for the benefit of the young people in the room?
I think we're moving into a future where you've got to educate to employ, if that's the right terminology, but educate for the skills that are currently needed, and not the traditional approach to just pushing people through in terms of the more professional and reading, writing, arithmetic. It's a lot broader than that these days. So it is important, and we see it coming to the fore more and more often. I mean, you've got a marvelous organisation here in Turkey, YGA, Young Gurus. I can't pronounce it in Turkish, but Young Gurus Association. No. Are you all familiar with YGA?
What's that?
Surely, somebody must put their hand up. No, Dennis, you know about YGA.
Yes, it's really good for the disabled students for accessing technology and to be in the society. So they are really
I mean, I was,
Sorry, you shouldn't give me the platform. I'm going to let you know. So, YGA is working for disability people mostly. I know it's really good for during the pandemic, such as I am interested in all the time distance learning. I love learning some things. Also, I'm a member of Visually Impaired Lawyers group, and we support young law students, and I can see YGA provides access for technology, how they inclusive the life. It's important. So yeah, I agree that the YGA is really good for that. Sorry.
No, good. Thank you.
no, thank you, Ned.
It's a great example.
Thank you. I mean, they've also got a new platform that they've created called Upschool.
Upschool.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a new initiative, and very relevant because it's all about bringing women into work by going to companies and looking for the gaps in their skills, and then agreeing a contract with Upschool and saying, right, you've got a gap, we want more women in there, we'll train up women to actually fill the gap you've got in your organization. So, this is another example of how, we're going to have to adapt to make sure that, we're educating people to fill the skills that are going to be required for future. So that's something that I think every institution has to be aware of, and not be locked into this old traditional approach to producing people with what are a more academic, more sort of professional skills orientation. Anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's employability, cooperation, collaboration. It seems to have been a current trend for so long now. But surely, this is something that we have to do better. This is something that we have to provide for, the young people, the pupils, the future generation, and whether it's done from within the institutions as we do come out of the pandemic, or whether there are new ways of looking at these collaborations. Professor Mehmet Akif, how key is it, employability going forward? Should this be our key focus for higher education institutions over the next few years?
Well, to a certain extent, that's the critical target, I think. But there are other things that you do for the goods of society, not only for jobs. But if you are a private institution, or if public university is investing in a new field, I think they should target employability. Today, it's difficult in Turkey to open up new realms for professions in higher educational system because of this attitude constantly taking reference to the existing system. If you want to open up a new department, a new bölüm, ana bilim dalı, or whatever you might want to call, the first thing that they ask you for a university, does this exist in another university? Therefore, this is not a good thing for innovation. I think the attitude is changing by the time, but it has to be faster. And there's another reason for that, why YÖK, Higher Education Council, is doing that, is because they match every single department with a profession at the end of the graduation. You have to be defined with a kind of profession, a kind of business that you are supposed to be doing. So why a state, even if it's not a private institution, should be investing in ABC new departments? So you have to prove to them that this is indeed a new profession, and indeed there's an opportunity for business. But how can we create these new innovative fields? That's another challenge, I guess. And here I think comes interdisciplinarity. So the existing system in Turkey does not permit that much flexibility. But I think we are feeling the necessity of opening up for more interdisciplinarity. What do I mean by that? For instance, In Turkey, if you are going to study physics, it's just physics. You enter a physics department and then you graduate from a physics department. You don't take that much of a biology classes or chemistry classes and so on and so forth. So how can we bring these different but yet neighboring fields together? I think where creativity lies the most. So same, for instance, industrial engineering in Turkey. This is one of the one of the hypest, right? Most trendy departments in Turkey, which in general, when you look around the world, does not exist. It's a creativity, so to speak, of the 1980s, but it doesn't work that much these days. So you have to come up with a better solution to the changing environment of science, technology, and industry. So I think we need more of a the bringing of industry and education actors together. I think we have a lot to do in that field. We need to go a very long way. That's one thing. But on the other hand, Turkish people are more flexible than their regular education impose on them. Therefore, they come up with, if you are a sort of a founder of a company, of a school, of a business or whatever, it means that you survive Turkish educational system. And yet you came up with your own ideas. You introduced those ideas to real life, but not to the system. So if we bring these together, the innovative approaches to industry and education, I think that will be a leap forward for Turkey and for the region, I guess.
Mm-hmm. It applies everywhere.
Yeah, it applies.
I mean, governments have a major role to play in all this, because if they don't change, then we're going to be stuck. And it's. I'm getting political now. I shouldn't do this. But I mean, if you've got a government that's driven by ideology, and we have too many governments around the world that is driven by ideology, then that ideology actually determines the type of education you're going to get.
All right.
And that does not always fit with the real world. And I include my own country in that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think we've been on quite a circle, haven't we? We started off definitely with the internationalization of education during turbulent times, opportunities and challenges. I'll bring it back just for a final thought, a key takeaway, if you like, just over the a question, absolutely, sir. Yes.
Thank you very much for your comments. I have a very specific question. You talked about changes, face-to-face, online.
Microphone's coming here.
All that. Now, one thing that is constant is that we all need a diploma. Now, do you think that diplomas will also change in the future? For example, if you're going to have an education that is purely face-to-face, or if it's distance learning, will there be a distinction between the two? And that could be key with regard to employment. That could change the way in which employers will pick you, whether you're having a distance learning or a face-to-face learning. So do you think that in the future this could also be changing as well? The diplomas are changing. That's my specific question.
Yeah, okay, that's a very good question. Thank you. I think
Can
I come to Dr. Soner with that question?
Well, that's a tough question, but first I want to make a point, because in the future it seems like in higher education institutions we are going to be witnessing a swift shift between vocational higher education institutions versus universities. And as you know, university, the term university comes from Latin, but in Greek they don't call it as university, but they call it as panepistemio, means the land of all subjects. So aren't we gonna teach subjects which are not finding any place in the industry, like physics? for example, like arts. I mean, employment is important, I agree, but is it the only mission of universities to teach subjects which can be employed, the graduates can be employed in the future, or we make those people intellectuals who are gonna shape the future? Who's gonna shape what? The industry is gonna shape the university, or the university is gonna shape the industry? So that's a big challenge in the future. And online diploma versus face-to-face diploma is gonna be an issue for a while in the future, honestly. Why? In Turkey, because we have an open university experience in Turkey, Anatolian University, maybe you heard of that. They have how many million students, I don't know. But the first question, if a person says, I am from Anadolu University, the first question we ask to the person is, whether it's open university or versus. So even the quality of your life changes based on your diploma in Turkey, because it's a social issue. I understand you. And that's the reason higher education institutions should make a distinction between vocational higher education institutions versus universities. We have to make that. Otherwise, universities are going to disappear, and company certificates are going to take the place of universities. So we have to make a choice between the two, but that's not a choice, but we have to go to the both way. I mean, we should keep our universities, as well as we have to provide vocational higher education institutions. And your question is going to be an issue, maybe for the next coming 10 years or 20 years, I don't know, but it's going to be a big issue. Why is that? Because most of the graduates now put in the sign on their CV saying that they received their degree face-to-face. What's that message for? So, because there are some, let me put it this way, worries about the quality of online learning, because it's not yet accepted by everybody, but probably it's gonna change by time. But for now, face-to-face education is still something that most of the companies are searching after the person. I don't know, but for example, let me give you an example of, it was in 1990 when I went to Michigan State for my master's, and I had no idea of email at that time, honestly. I didn't hear of email. My advisor told me that he sent me a mail. I went back to the dorm, I checked my box, and there was no mail. I came back and he said, did you check your mail? I said, there was nothing in the box. He said, how did you check your mail? I said, I checked my mailbox at the dorm. He said, okay, he's from Turkey. So one of the TAs, he picked up and said, could you please show Soner how to check email? That was the first time. I went to lab, computer lab, and checked. The next day I went to the lab again because I was going to check my email. But the station I used the day before was being used by someone else, and I waited for that person because I thought that the mail was coming to that station, only to that station. And the lady who was taking care of the lab, she said, what are you waiting for? I said, I'm waiting for my email. Why? All stations are available, but it comes to this station. That's the reason I am waiting for. So technology is something like, 30 years ago I'm talking about, everything has changed so fast. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But the point is that human being is not changing that fast. That's the only thing I am certain of.
We do.
What's going to happen with technology, I don't know. But I know what has been happening with the humankind for the last 2 million years. I have the record of that. So I'm sure that face-to-face education is going to keep its prestige in the future. But I don't know how it's going to switch the other side. Maybe it's going to take 10 years, maybe 10 days, 10 months. I have no idea, honestly. So we have to get ready for unknown. That's the biggest skill, maybe.
We will.
I think the pressure, building on what you're saying, really now does lie with the universities. I think right now, today, they may be in a fortunate position in that whether it's online or whether it's face-to-face, the degree title's the same, and then there's the assumption is that the quality must be the same because of that,
Exactly.
and your standard is the same. But when I say the pressures on the universities, I think as we go forwards, well, their ability moving into the workplace will be tested. And it's taken centuries for some of the universities to reach their standing, their reputation, their prestige is built on everything that's gone before, whereas the online delivery for them is new. And so it may be the case that they can demonstrate that the standards are the same and that the outcomes are the same and the quality of the students going into the workplace is the same. And if that's the case, fantastic. But for some institutions, they might fall behind. New institutions might be much better with their online delivery and build-up because of that. So I think now and going forwards, it's up to the universities to demonstrate that what they're providing online meets the standards which we've already assumed and has been borne out through decades that they do face-to-face. So I think that's there's no real answer about who will prove that, but I think that's what we'll learn.
Right. The old wine, the new bottle.
Yes.
That's a big question.
Yeah, thank you. I think, Professor Mehmet Akif, if we could come to you for either to respond to this question or just a final thought from the panel.
Well, a good diploma is always a good diploma, so there's no question about that. Yes, things are changing, especially I think when the diploma is going to be relevant or not. That's the question. What is going to be the source of information? Who are going to be the people or the institutions giving information or education? So internet fenomenleri var. You know, they are educating youth about almost everything. But they don't have basis, they don't have the substance. They go somewhere, they, you know, publish some 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. You'd adore them. But can we rely on that information?
Good one.
So that's a very important thing. What are the centers of providing that education and information? I think we have to think about that. And if, like Adam highlighted, if universities adapt to this new environment, why not? The existing system can be revitalized. Regarding the internationalization of education, I think we are going through a very turbulent times, not because of, like I said, COVID-19 only, but because of several other things: Ukraine crisis, Syria, Palestine, Rohingya, you know, whatever, you name it. You can't find a place without a crisis.
Right.
So I think we have to be reminded with our humanity again, and we should put our technological development, technological attributes to better use for ourselves and for humankind. I think when we have that approach, we are at the doors of a very important big leap forward in the next few decades. A big leap forward is ahead of us. So the question is, are we ready for this? By remaining humans, by bringing our social and judicial traits into conformity with this level of advance and so on and so forth. So I think it's up to us whether to go forward or to stay behind or lag behind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, may I add one thing?
Sure, yes.
That's
a response before the
I
final.
didn't realize I said something inappropriate.
you have to start a YouTube channel after this.
Should I? I don't have time.
Now, what is so important, Mehmet Hoca said, we might be going through a digital medieval time because of the ignorance of people, because we don't know what is reliable, what is not reliable.
Absolutely.
And today, unfortunately, but the universities are going to be the only center for verifying the information, I guess. That's the reason which we need universities, as well as vocational schools. That's the reason we have universities, because how are we going to know that what is true, what is not true? So the center for the verifying anything is universities is going to take the key role here, I guess. We have to keep this in the mind, because I'm not certain if this digitalized world has increased the ignorance or decreased the ignorance. I'm not certain of that.
Right, good. A good final thought. Thank you. Well, dear friends, why don't we applaud and thank the panelists
Can I just...
oh, wait.
They want to go.
There's so many, like thank you. With great panelists and with great minds, there will always be many final thoughts. I'm going to give you my own final thought in a minute. No, I'm not. Okay, Chris, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that's being said, and at the end of the day, you know, we're in a point in time where we will all reevaluate our values.
Right.
In terms of, you know, our social impact, in terms of our humanity, in terms of making sure that, you know, we have an inclusive set of shared values, because we've lost them. The world has gone crazy, and it's all to do with politicians, crazy politicians around the world. But, you know, I mean, I believe that, you know, we can do this, and I believe that we all inherently, it's in our DNA that we do share the same values of humanity. Right. And I think that will carry us forward. And, you know, education is a major part of that, that it has to be embedded in any education format that we have.
Right.
Thank you. So we are, this, if you like, is the official end of the discussion, panel part of the symposium. But I'm just going to hand over to Adam from NCUK, because he did bring with him today two of his partners from the consortium, yeah. And I think it would be amiss if we didn't have them just briefly to introduce themselves and their universities on stage before we have some thank yous and presentations. So over to Adam.
Yeah, I thought you were relieved. I thought you were going to say we handed over to the Turkish half of the symposium now. I was going to struggle if we had to speak in Turkish. I've only been a few days. So I'd like to welcome up Sarah and Josh, who are representatives from the University of Bristol and Queen Mary University. They're NCUK partner universities. Students who study the foundation can go on to study in either of those, and students who do the international year one that I mentioned earlier can progress to the University of Bristol. So they're making their way through the cameras at the back, and they'll come up now and speak to you all for a few minutes. So thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah from the University of Bristol. Very pleased to be here today to meet with you. We are an NCUK partner university, so you can come to join us via that partnership. If you do have any questions about the University of Bristol, I'd be more than happy to chat with you afterwards. I'll be hanging around at the end, so any questions, let me know.
And thank you everyone for coming today. Thank you for that session. It was really informative. My name is Josh Ibrahim, and I'm the regional manager for European, Turkish, Saudi Arabian citizens at Queen Mary University of London. We're also an NCUK partner and likewise accept students taking the A-level route, taking the NCUK Foundation as well. Hundreds of different subject options, and like I say, we will be at the back speaking to people after today's session as well, and I've got plenty of business cards should anyone wish to contact me after today.